Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our infographic webinar series. The title of the workshop today is called Visual Storytelling, Learning How to Create an Effective Infographic. If you joined us for part 1, you'll know that we went through the basics of what an infographic is and the process you can take to start to create your own infographic. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, we would recommend that you try this out just to get some of the basics of the process and the terminology and information that you need to get started making an infographic. If you already have the background and are ready to get started, part 2 is a great webinar to give you a kickstart into creating a draft of an infographic or to learn a little bit more about a new software that you might not have used before. My name is Kaitlin Roke, and I'm currently the Associate Manager of Nutrition and Scientific Communications at the Canadian Sugar Institute. The Canadian Sugar Institute is a national nonprofit organization that focuses on international trade of sugars, as well as the science of sugars, carbohydrates, and health. The Canadian Sugar Institute creates infographics to share information about sugars and communicate this information to our key target audiences. So one reason we wanted to put together this webinar was to allow other people to develop the skills to communicate their nutrition messages and share it with their important target audiences. So we hope this webinar today will help you get started with your first infographic or may enhance skills you already have in continuing to create infographics for your communications. So the learning objectives of our session today are to allow you to creatively take scientific concepts and work to make them easy to understand for your target audience. So these could be scientific concepts from a research project that you're doing, from something that would be important from a client or patient perspective, or other organizational needs that might be important to communicate in a new way. The second objective would be to increase confidence in using infographic tools for nutrition and scientific information dissemination. Sometimes trying things firsthand will help to increase your confidence and allow you to easily transition into creating these tools in the future. And the last being that if you're following along with us today, we hope that by the end of the session you have a skeleton and a draft of your very own infographic. If you are familiar with part 1, you would have seen this process shared a few times. The reason why we bring it up again is we do think it's relevant to follow a sort of process or step-by-step in order to help you go from start to end. Again, as a reminder, this is an iterative process and you may not flow smoothly from step 1 to step 7. Feedback is essential and feedback can greatly improve the quality of the work that you're putting together. For some of you, you may choose to do a pencil and paper approach to getting started with your infographic. To others who are savvy with technology and want to jump in, you may find that brainstorming and playing around with different options in this tool of your choice is a great way for you to get your ideas flowing. Today we're going to be using Piktochart, but there are several different options available for both free and for paid infographic software development. And there are some websites listed here that are featured on the Canadian Nutrition Society website. And there are also some freely available mapping tools. So if maps are important for your research project, your community, etc., you may find these tools are helpful in communicating your messages. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to jump in and get started using Piktochart as our tool. So Piktochart has a lot of different features, one being both paid and free options. So getting started is easy with a free account because you can get a sense of the tool and see if it's going to be something that will be worthwhile for you to continue using. The reason that we chose Piktochart is that myself, having had past experience with the software, I'm most comfortable with this tool. This is not to say that this is the best tool out there. There are lots of other options available. So try out a few and see what's going to work the best for you. So when we're getting started today, we'll ask everyone to go to www.piktochart.com. And once you get there, you'll find a screen that looks something like this. And what you'll do next is click on the left-hand side, the pink button that says Start for Free. So once you've done that, will take you to the next slide and ask you to do a one-step sign up. So you can use your Google account or your Facebook account, or enter in your name, email, and password, and click on Create Account at the bottom. If you already have an account, we'll encourage you to sign into your account now. So this might be a webinar where you have a few different things going on your screen at once if you're by your computer. You may have this webinar up, and you may also have Piktochart up in the background. As we move through the webinar, I will transition between the PowerPoint slides and the Piktochart software so that we can see different elements as we're explaining them. So after you've signed up, you're going to get a message to confirm your account, and we'll ask you to click on the link in order to activate your account. So as you'll see, once you've confirmed your email, you'll get back to the software tool page, and it will ask you a few questions about yourself, whether you answer them or proceed forward. That will be your last step in setting up your account. Okay, so now you're in the software. And what we're going to start with is we're going to ask everyone to start from the beginning and create a new template. And this just allows us to show some of the basic infographic elements. However, once you get more comfortable with the software, you may find yourself interested in experimenting in some of the other things that they have to offer. So I'm going to take a moment to transition to our Piktochart screen here so we can follow along together. Okay, so this is my dashboard, and we have asked everyone to go to the top right-hand side and click on the Create New button. And as you know, today we're going to be focusing on infographics, but as you can see, there are other different presentation options that you can explore at another time. So on the left-hand side, we're going to choose Infographic. And once you get to the next slide, as we suggested, we're going to ask everyone to choose Create a New Infographic. There are several templates available, some of which are excellent and may be perfect for what you're looking for. So we encourage you to take some time to search through these before you get started, as there may be a template that's a really good fit for the message that you're trying to communicate. However, if you have an idea in mind, or if you have a template that works for your organization or research group, you may find that starting from scratch allows you to customize your work just a little bit more. Okay, so once you've clicked on Create a New Infographic, it will take you to the blank slate. And just before we get started, we all know how frustrating it can be if our work doesn't get saved, so we'll orient you to a few of the important tools. So on the top right-hand panel, you'll see the Save button here, the Preview button, which allows you to take a look at your work after you've gotten started. You can download your infographic, you can share it using a link with others, and then you'll have your account settings and details. A few other important additional pieces of information are at the bottom left-hand side. You'll see a tour button. So if you're new to Piktochart, they do a great job of orienting people to their software and providing them information on the tools available. Further, on the right-hand side, there's a green Need Help. They have an excellent staff and lots of services available to help people get started. So if you find you have more questions during or after this webinar, please use Piktochart's resources that are available and ask for help in getting the questions you're looking for answered. When we're choosing the size of our infographic, we may be familiar that sometimes we see 8.5 by 11, which would be the standard paper size. Sometimes we see long ones, poster size, etc. So if you go to the toolbar on the left-hand side and click on Settings, it will allow you to customize your setting size. So A4 is 8.27 times 11 inches. We have a letter option and then custom. So choose the size of the infographic that's most relevant to the project that you're going to complete. And this will help you stay within the constraints of the infographic and not continue to extend the style and information that you're putting together. Another important thing, if you're thinking about choosing an infographic with multiple background colors, some people may choose to add a block. Adding a block allows you to have different colors in the background of your text and insert images over top of that. The only note here is that blocks do not count in the standard paper size. So for example, if I'm going to add a block, it's adding a block into my canvas, but extending the entire length of the canvas. So now the letter size is not relevant for the whole infographic. So I'm just going to slide this back up to the top. So just keep that in mind, that blocks can be really helpful in your design, but they do not necessarily follow the rules that have been set by the paper and size limitations. So now I have two blocks in my graphic, a block at the top, and then this large block on the bottom. If you've decided throughout your infographic process that this block actually makes sense at the bottom, you can use these tools here. So if I'm selecting this block, I can move it up. So now my large block appears at the top and the small block appears at the bottom. So this can be helpful if you have multiple strips of information that may need to be reoriented as you go through the planning process of your infographic. Okay, so we'll start by adding some background colors. As we mentioned, that's one of the main features for creating a block in your graphic. So if we highlight the top block, we're going to go to the left-hand side and click on background. Next, we're going to select the paint bucket and choose a color. So it allows you to specify the color using these numerical codes, which may be important if you have certain organizational or lab standards for the colors that you're using in your communications. So the color that we're going to choose here, we'll enter in ourselves, but again, you can feel free to choose more colors below or one of the standard colors to get started. So this is the point where you can start to customize your work to something that's relevant for you, or you can follow along with the code or with the work that we have today and use that as a template to get started. So we've created a green block in our first section. And just a note that you can refer to other tools to help you choose colors that will be looking good together and matching well. And so one example of those is a website called Color Picker. So it's www.color.picker.com. And so that will help you choose different color patterns. So I'm going to choose that color for the top block, and I'm going to customize another color for the bottom block. So I have now added a darker green at the top and a lighter green at the bottom. The next, we want to talk about the text. Of course, all infographics require some text to share your story. So on the left-hand side, right under background, we're going to click on text, and it will pull up some different options. So these are just suggestions of different sizes and typographies that they've put together. So you can either click and it will insert, or you can click and drag into the canvas. And it allows you to double click and edit. And so we're going to move our text block up to the top. And as you'll see now, the top bar is very similar to what you'll see in Microsoft Word. So it allows you to change the font type. It allows you to change the font size, bold, underline, etc. So we're going to change the title of this infographic to Facts About Fruit. And we're going to change the font to Veluco. And we're going to change the size to 100. So as a reminder, your title should be the largest part of your infographic. So you can choose a font size that's going to reflect the information that you're going to share. So now we have our title, and we can also change the color. So the color is at the top for our font, and we're going to change this to white. So you can choose an option here, or you can put in your color code at the top. So there's some optional information to make a shadowed effect, and again, depends on the information you're trying to convey and the ease of readability of your work. So just as an example, we just copied and pasted our title and changed it to black, and then we're able to position this in such a way that it creates a little bit of a shadow, just as an option. Okay, so if you want to add other text into your work, again, you can click or drag and drop, and it'll insert a standard template, which you can customize with the font, the size, and the type at the top. When we're thinking about text styles, commonly you'll hear in design the difference between serif and sans serif fonts. Typically, sans serif fonts are minimal and modern, and they're most suitable for reading online or on the web. A lot of times, serif fonts are better for print resources, but maybe a little bit strong and hard to read. So some common sans serif fonts that we'll see are Arial, Gothic, Franklin Gothic, Impact, etc. And some serif that we're very familiar with are Times New Roman, Century, Georgia, etc. It's important to use the same font style throughout. It suggested graphic design principles that you can choose 3 different font styles if they match well, and have the headline and content separated. It suggested that you don't overuse effects such as underline, italics, or bold in order to communicate your messages, so consider those sparingly as you go through your work. So we're going to take a minute here and save our work. So the Save button is on the top panel. So we'll save our visual. We can rename this to something that's relevant to us. We'll save that again, and we're going to transition back to our PowerPoint for a few slides. So an example about the text is choosing text that's going to appropriately convey the message and reflect the image that you're sharing. So for example, the top image of the person on the kayak, the word tranquility matches the scenery. The text on the bottom doesn't really match. When you read that word, tranquility, you don't really feel calm and tranquil like the image is trying to convey. So this just gives you an example about how the font type is important to the message that you're sharing. Next, we talk about true colors. So color does matter, and it's important what colors mix together. If this is giving you anxiety and bringing you back to grade 1 painting, don't worry. There's lots of tools available to help you choose colors that will go nicely together. There may also be organizational, university, clinic standards that you have to comply with when creating the tools. Another important note is that on screen, the colors may appear different than they do in print. So just be careful and test it out before you go ahead and send your infographic to print or print 100 copies. See what the difference is on your screen and when you print it out. Okay, so if we think about how to use the space that we have and include the text that's important to us, the concept of white and negative space may be familiar to us. It's something that we might have heard of from commercials or design or logos, but it's very relevant in infographic design. So the term negative space originated with photographs or photographers when people were developing film in dark rooms. So positive is the subject of the photo and negative is the background. So anything that is not drawing attention is part of the negative space. So when we think about our infographic, we want to make our main points and key messages the parts that are drawing the attention. So the rest of it should be the negative space. So it could be a color, the space free of design elements like photos, text, or logos. It could be a background color. It might not always be white, but that tends to be how we think of it. Lots of people have asked, what is the rule? So how much white space or negative space do we need? And the answer is that it isn't an exact science. It's really dependent on what you're trying to do, and it's kind of subjective. So it depends on the message and kind of the design overall that you're trying to go for. We do see some guidelines that may be helpful if we're getting started. So one guideline is that you should have 60% of the infographic as an image, 10% text, and 30% white space. However, most infographics tend to need more than 10% text in order to actually communicate your concept clearly and effectively. Another rule that you could choose to follow would be a 1:5 negative space to content. And this ensures that negative space is evenly spread and balanced throughout the design. You don't want something that's extremely cluttered on one side, but extremely empty on the other side. There are also designs that are even more negative space and even less negative space. It really depends on your goals, and it depends on how you've organized your work to keep everything balanced and consistent. A little bit more, if we're thinking about consolidating, this can be a nice way to draw our readers' attention or our audience's attention to certain elements. So this encourages people to group similar items together to create a flow and reduce the clutter. It also reduces the small negative spaces into a few larger ones, which gives our eyes a rest. Another point would be to create intentional space. So don't leave your white images in the margins or the centers. Focus your white space on the margins versus the center of your infographic. As we mentioned above, negative space provides a visual break. So having too little space can feel overwhelming. So as a reader, when you're trying to consume the information, if your eyes don't have a rest, you may feel like it's a lot of information to take in. So one thing that you could do is take a step back and defocus your eyes to look at the piece as a whole, something like you might do with a piece of art. It allows you to help separate the content and the negative space, and the main concept should come clear to you as you refocus your image. And another important concept is visual hierarchy. So more white space is needed for more important images or text, and it helps you to emphasize elements and make them pop out. So consider what messages are the most important to you, and you can elevate them on your graphic. A few more. So here's a few examples where it shows the difference between where the white space and negative space are. A lot of these new website designs are going towards a clean design scheme, which means we're seeing a lot more white space than we used to. So the right-hand side is providing an example of where the white space exists in order to draw our eyes to the most important elements. A few examples here are graphics that have used white space really effectively to draw the reader's attention to their logos. So in the example of logo design, on the left-hand side, we see the NBC peacock, which effectively has used the white space in the middle to include the shape of the peacock body and head. And on the right-hand side, you have two different images in one, which is quite clever, and it's used the white space to both be the helmet and the shadow behind the golfer. Okay, so with that, and knowing a little bit more about our infographic design, we'll shift back to our Piktochart software. So next, we're going to think about graphics. As we know, we consider infographics to be extremely visual and have a lot more interest in things going on than a typical text-based document. So in order to do that, we'll go to the left-hand side and choose the Graphics tab. So there's a few different categories. If we click on shapes and icons, it will allow you to do some solid shapes. And so for example, if we insert a circle, in Piktochart, anything that's a solid color, you'll be able to change the color. So if we want to change this to blue, we can change the shape to blue. Any infographic designs that are pre-designed by the designers at Piktochart aren't able to be altered. So if you see a solid graphic, you know you can manipulate the colors. If it's already a pre-colored graphic, you won't be able to make any of those changes yourself. And a note here is that the search bar has been excellent. In our experience, it's a really, really useful and effective tool for finding the graphic that you're looking for. And just be patient and try different words. So for example, let's say you're looking for some images to add to our facts about fruit. You may choose to enter the word food, fruit, snack, apple, strawberry, and see what comes up. So for example, when we search the word food, there's a whole bunch of graphics that come up for the word food. If you're looking for a specific food, you can try that. But keep trying different things as different images are tagged differently in the search tools. If you want to upload an image, if you found an image that you really like, or if there's a logo or an element that you want to incorporate, or a picture, a real picture that you want to include, you also have the option to upload images in Piktochart. So on the left-hand side, you would click on the upload. It would allow you to browse images on your computer and upload them to be able to insert into your graphic. When we're talking about the difference between selecting a graphic in the software and uploading one, it's important to think about the consistency and the look and feel of your work. For example, sometimes it's really important to share the real picture of the topic that you're discussing. However, other times it's more important to have consistent graphics in order to help tell your story. So you can consider that when you're choosing the different types of images that you're bringing into your work. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about images, so we can select an image for our work today. And now that this image is black, we know that we can change the color ourselves. We're thinking about data and charts. That's another thing that infographics can help to convey. Data and information can be complex and hard to visualize. So infographics and tools like these allow us to put our text and words into a different format in order to improve the readability by our target audience. So if we click on the tools at the very bottom on the left-hand side, and we click on charts. Today we're not going to go into maps and videos, but those are options you can explore at another time, which could be really great elements to include into your work. So once we click on charts, we'll recognize that there's a lot of different charts available. So we're going to start with this one just as a way to get our data into the system. So there's an example here of data that's already pre-inserted just to give you a sense of what the graphs will look like. So we're just going to take a minute and enter in some data here. And this can be an opportunity for you to enter data that's most relevant to you, or you can feel welcome to follow along with the example that we're creating today. Once you have the data entered, you should see the chart on the left-hand side is now reflecting your data on the right-hand side. And once you go to the right-hand side of your chart, the little gear will allow you to adjust the settings. So you can choose the legends to be on or off. You can choose different colors that will better represent the information that you're going to be sharing. And you can customize all of the elements of the graphic that you would like to do in order to reflect the data in a way that's most relevant to you. Another important feature, which is really exciting for people dealing with a lot of data, is the fact that you can import Excel sheets directly. So this is a time saver by using your own Excel data. So don't feel worried about having to replicate all of that work you've already done. You can import your Excel directly into Piktochart. So we're going to change the title of our graphic. Okay, so when we're ready, we're going to click on Insert Chart. We've inserted the chart into our graphic, and now that we're looking at it, maybe this isn't the best way to share this data. So if you want to make any changes to your work, you'll click on the pencil icon in the top right-hand side. If you take another look along the edge, you can change this to a different type of chart. So we're going to choose a vertical bar chart instead. And once we're happy with that change, we can click Update Chart. So now our original triangle chart has changed into a bar chart. So let's say we want to go back and see if there's a few more things we can do with this data. These tools are really, really exciting and unique, and we're really happy to share them with you today. So we hope that you can find different ways to display your data if that's important to your communications. So one option that we think is a great way to share statistics, and we commonly see in public health or other messages, is something called an icon matrix. So this allows you to display your data in a way that would be relevant to the topic that you're discussing. So something that we see a lot is, for example, if there's a statistic about an event or a disease, it might say 2 in 5 Canadians have blank. So one way to do that is your data on the right-hand side would be reflected over here. So you would have 2 and then 5 total, but 2 would be a different color than the other ones. So this is a really unique way for us to share, in this case, the differences in the types of carbohydrates in an apple. So as we can see visually, there are a lot more components that are fructose than there are of fiber, glucose, and sucrose. And we can also customize the shapes. So if we don't think a triangle is most relevant for us, we can go to our settings, and we can choose the shape that's going to work for us. So we can choose from one of the predetermined options, or we can choose from the icon library and find something that's even more specific and relevant to us. So this library is almost the same library that you have to search for graphics, and so it allows you a lot of options to customize the data that you have. So once we're happy with this, we can update our chart. Okay, so now what we've done so far, we have added blocks, we've customized the size of our graphic, we've inserted text, changed the size, font, and color, we've added graphics and changed the size and shape of them, and we've also added data from an Excel or directly that can be represented in different ways: bar charts, pie charts, icon matrix, etc. And a few important tools now that you've got to this point. One is the preview at the top. So this allows you to take a step out of the editing software and take a look at the graphic and the work that you've created. Another is download. So if you wanted to share this with colleagues, with your target audience, with other people for feedback, you can share it through the download function. So depending on the type of account that you have, you can choose a PNG or a PDF file and download this work. And another interesting feature is the share option. So this allows you to create a unique link and then share it with someone by email. So this way you're not attaching large, bulky PDF or PNG files that may be taking a lot of space and energy to download and share. So you can create a unique link. So now that you've created your link, you can copy it, paste it, and share it with other people. So another interesting feature about Piktochart is you can also share your infographic kind of like a PowerPoint or a presentation. So if we go to share, we copy the link, and then whoever, if we're doing this in a presentation format, if we're sharing this with a colleague, it will allow us to open this link in another tab. So when you click on Show Presentation, the unique part is that it will share block by block. So this could be important if you have added multiple intentional blocks into your work. So the first block is our title block. We only have 2 right now. So our second block will be the entire rest of our graphic. So you can imagine if you had multiple blocks in your graphic that you would have multiple slides to go through to share your information in a different way. So at this point, we'll go back to our PowerPoint and say, ta-da! So in a really short, quick intro to Piktochart and infographic software, we've taken you from the basics of getting started to creating your account to actually inserting data and creating different types of charts and different ways to share your information. So some of us may feel quite tired at the end of this, but just know it is a process and worth taking time to get into, and something that you'll get back to and learn more about the software of your choice or about Piktochart as you get going through. So a few acknowledgements at the end of this presentation. The first is to the staff at the Canadian Sugar Institute. The individuals here were integral to making this presentation a success and provided countless rounds of feedback on the information, on the slides, in order to ensure that we're delivering valuable and useful content to our audiences. Secondly, we did have a partnership with Piktochart in the sense that they provided feedback and commentary to ensure the messages that we were sharing about Piktochart were consistent with the tools and support that they had available. Third, there were 3 individuals that were integral to my development and learning about Piktochart, and those were Jim, Kate, and Julia, who provided foundational knowledge in getting me started and learning about all of the tools that Piktochart had available. So big thank you to all of these individuals for helping to make this presentation and webinar possible. For interest, there are different pricing options for Piktochart, something that you can look into on your own time if you're interested in getting an account. There's a few really essential and helpful tools that Piktochart does provide. This example here provides you a layout of different options for displaying your data, which may help if you want to either use a template or use something like this to help you get started to display your information. We've included here several references and resources. So as mentioned, Piktochart is very comprehensive and offers lots of tutorials and how-tos in order to help people use their tool effectively. There are also lots of tools online that help you to choose colors, pick font combinations, manage your white space, etc. So check those out if you're new to graphic design or it's something that you want to learn more about and create pretty, effective, nice work. There's also some scientific articles and references that we've used in this process and our own knowledge and and learning on this topic, so we've included those here. And the following video is a summary of what we've covered, so you can check that out on YouTube. It's a high level of what we've gone through today, taking us from the start to the draft of an infographic. And we wanted to end by saying thank you very much for your kind attention. We are so happy that we've been able to put together these webinars, and we hope that you find them very helpful and interesting for your own work and practice. If you have any questions about infographics, I'm very happy to connect. So you can find me at any of these emails below, and or you can find me on Twitter. So we hope that you really enjoyed this and are excited to get started or to continue your infographic work. Thank you very much for listening. Kind regards.